I thought my perfect family was unbreakable until I found a hidden letter in my husband's office that revealed a secret he'd kept for years. My name is Hannah, and I used to believe I had it all figured out. A loving husband, Mark, 2 beautiful kids, Sophie and Ethan, and a home that felt like a safe haven. We'd been married for 12 years, and sure, we had our ups and downs, but I thought we were solid. Mark was the kind of guy who'd bring me coffee in bed, plan family game nights, and kiss me goodnight no matter how late he got home. Our life in suburban Chicago wasn't glamorous, but it was ours, cozy, predictable, filled with love. Or so I thought. Looking back, I see the cracks I ignored, the moments I brushed off as stress or quirks. But nothing could have prepared me for the truth I uncovered last fall, a truth that shattered everything I knew about my marriage. It started innocently enough. Mark had been working late a lot, which wasn't unusual. He's a financial consultant, and fall is his busy season with clients rushing to close deals before the holidays. But this time, something felt off. He'd come home distracted, his eyes glued to his phone, and when I'd ask about his day, his answers were vague, short sentences, no details. I'd catch him staring into space, like his mind was somewhere else. I told myself it was work pressure, maybe a tough client, but a knot in my stomach wouldn't go away. Then there was the night that changed everything. It was a Thursday, and Mark was at the office, or so he said. The kids were asleep, and I was tidying up, trying to keep busy. His home office was a mess, papers everywhere, coffee cups piling up. I decided to organize it, thinking it'd be a nice surprise. That's when I found it, a small, folded piece of paper tucked inside a book on his shelf, one of those old finance textbooks he never opened anymore. It was a letter, handwritten, the ink slightly faded, but clear enough to read. My hands shook as I unfolded it. The words hit me like a tidal wave. "Dear Mark," it began, in a looping, feminine script. I know we said we'd never write these things down, but I needed to get this out. Every moment with you feels like stealing time from the world. I don't care that it's complicated, I love you, and I know you feel it too. It was signed E. My heart pounded so loud I could barely hear my own thoughts. Who was E? Why was this in my husband's office? I kept reading, each line worse than the last. The letter described moments, stolen glances, secret meetings, a weekend he'd told her he'd never forget. My mind flashed to last year when Mark went to a conference in Denver. He'd come back quieter than usual, but I'd chalked it up to exhaustion. Now, I wasn't so sure. I sat there, clutching the letter, my world tilting. I wanted to believe it was old, from before we met, but the details didn't add up. The letter mentioned a restaurant we'd been to together last year, a place Mark had suggested for our anniversary. Had he been there with her too? I felt sick, like the ground was slipping out from under me. I didn't confront him that night. I couldn't. The kids were sleeping down the hall, and I didn't trust myself to stay calm. Instead, I hid the letter in my jewelry box and spent the night staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of our marriage, searching for signs I'd missed. The next morning, I tried to act normal, making breakfast for Sophie and Ethan, packing their lunches, kissing them goodbye as they ran to the school bus. Mark was already gone, leaving a note about an early meeting. His absence gave me time to think, to plan. I wasn't going to let this destroy me without answers. I started small, checking his desk drawers, his laptop bag, anything I could find. There was nothing obvious, no more letters, no photos, but I noticed his laptop was locked with a new password. That was new. He'd always been open with his devices, or so I thought. My suspicion grew, a gnawing ache that wouldn't let go. I decided to dig deeper. I'm not proud of it, but I logged into our shared phone account online. Mark's call history showed numbers I didn't recognize, late-night texts to someone in Colorado. Denver again. My mind raced back to that conference. I cross-checked the dates with the letter's mention of a weekend. They matched. I felt like I was unraveling a mystery I didn't want to solve, but I couldn't stop. I called one of the numbers, my hands shaking. A woman's voice answered, professional but warm. Hello, this is Elena. Elena. I hung up, my heart in my throat. I didn't know what to say, but her name burned into my mind. Over the next few days, I became a detective in my own life. I checked Mark's credit card statements discreetly, using our joint account login. There were charges I couldn't explain, a hotel in Denver, a coffee shop I'd never heard of, even a jewelry store purchase from months ago. I hadn't received any jewelry. The pieces were falling into place, and each one hurt more than the last. I started noticing other things, how Mark would take calls in the garage, how he'd changed his cologne, how he'd stopped wearing his wedding ring, claiming it was uncomfortable at work. I'd believed him. Why wouldn't I? He was my husband, the father of my children, the man I'd built a life with. I didn't confront him yet. I needed more, something undeniable. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I followed him. One evening, he said he was meeting a client downtown. I left the kids with my sister, saying I had errands to run, and drove to his office. His car wasn't there. Instead, I found it parked outside a wine bar in the city, a place we'd never been to together. I sat in my car, watching through the window. There he was, laughing with a woman, brunette, elegant, maybe in her late 30s. She touched his arm, and he didn't pull away. My chest tightened, but I didn't cry. I took a photo, my hands steady despite the storm inside me. That was Elena, I was sure of it. When Mark came home that night, I was calm. Too calm. I asked about his meeting, and he gave me the same vague answers. I didn't push. I was building my case, gathering strength for the moment I'd face him. But the weight of it was crushing me. I'd look at Sophie and Ethan, their innocent faces, and wonder how I'd protect them from this. They loved their dad. He was their hero, coaching Ethan's soccer games, reading bedtime stories to Sophie. How could I tell them their father was living a lie? I started losing sleep, my appetite gone, my smiles forced. I was unraveling, but I refused to let it show, not yet. I reached out to my best friend, Claire, the only person I could trust with this. We met at a park, away from prying eyes, and I told her everything, the letter, the calls, the wine bar. She hugged me as I cried, something I hadn't let myself do until then. You don't deserve this, she said. But you're stronger than you know. I didn't feel strong, but her words stuck with me. She offered to help, to watch the kids if I needed time to figure things out. I was grateful, but I knew this was my fight. I had to face Mark, not just for me, but for Sophie and Ethan, for the life we'd built. The final piece came unexpectedly. I was at the grocery store, distracted, when I ran into an old colleague of Mark's, Brian. He asked about Mark, casually mentioning he'd seen him at a conference in Denver last year. He seemed cozy with some woman from his firm, Brian said, oblivious to the bomb he'd just dropped. I pressed for details, keeping my voice steady. Brian described her, brunette, polished, named Elena. He thought they were just colleagues, but the way they acted felt off. I thanked him, my mind racing. It was real. Elena wasn't just a name on a letter, she was part of my husband's secret life. I went home and pulled out the letter again, reading it over and over. Each word felt like a betrayal, not just of me, but of our family. I thought about Sophie's giggle when Mark tossed her in the air, Ethan's proud smile when his dad cheered at his games. How could he risk that? I started planning my next move. I wasn't going to let Mark's lies destroy us. I took photos of the letter, the credit card statements, everything I'd found. I saved them in a hidden folder on my phone. I didn't know how this would end, but I knew one thing: I was done being the trusting wife who ignored the signs. Whatever came next, I'd face it head-on, for me and for my kids. I still reeling from the secret I uncovered about my husband, Mark. For 12 years, I thought we had a perfect family, 2 kids, Sophie and Ethan, a cozy home in suburban Chicago, and a marriage built on love and trust. But then I found a letter hidden in his office, written by someone named E, confessing her love for him. It led me down a rabbit hole of clues, unexplained credit card charges, late-night calls to a woman named Elena in Denver, a photo of them together at a wine bar. I'd seen Mark with her, laughing, touching her arm, living a life I didn't know existed. I was done ignoring the signs. I had evidence, photos, receipts, the letter, saved in a hidden folder on my phone. Now, I had to decide what to do with it, for me, for Sophie, for Ethan. The days after seeing Mark with Elena at the wine bar were torture. I'd wake up each morning, my stomach in knots, forcing a smile as I made pancakes for the kids. Sophie, my 8-year-old, would chatter about her school play, while Ethan, 10, begged for new soccer cleats. I'd nod, laugh, hug them, but inside, I was screaming. How could Mark do this to us? How could he look his kids in the eye, knowing he was betraying their mom? I wanted to confront him, to scream every question burning in my chest, but I needed to be smart. This wasn't just about me, it was about protecting my children, their sense of safety, their world. I kept digging, quietly, obsessively. I checked our bank accounts again, noticing more charges, a boutique in Denver, a dinner at a place called The Willow, even a charge for a spa day I'd never taken. Each discovery was a stab, but I couldn't stop. I cross-referenced dates with Mark's work trips. The Denver conference last year? He'd been with Elena. A client meeting in Seattle? Another hotel charge, another lie. I felt like I was peeling back layers of a man I no longer knew. The Mark who coached Ethan's soccer team, who tucked Sophie in with a bedtime story, was a stranger. I started documenting everything, not just for me, but in case I needed proof. Proof for what? I wasn't sure yet. I confided in Claire again, meeting her at a cafe far from our neighborhood. I showed her the folder on my phone, the letter, the receipts, the photo of Mark and Elena. Her eyes widened as she scrolled through it. "Hannah, this is unreal," she said. "He's been living a whole other life." I nodded, my throat tight. She asked what I was going to do. "I need to confront him," I said, "but I don't know how to do it without breaking the kids." Claire suggested a lawyer, just to understand my options. The word divorce hung in the air, heavy and real. I wasn't ready to say it out loud, but I called a family attorney the next day, a woman named Lisa who'd been recommended by a friend. She was kind but direct, telling me to keep gathering evidence and to think about what I wanted for myself and the kids. Lisa's advice stuck with me. Don't let emotion drive your decisions. Easier said than done. Every time Mark walked through the door, smiling like nothing was wrong, I wanted to throw the letter in his face. But I waited, planning the moment carefully. I needed him to admit the truth, not just for me, but so I could move forward without his lies hanging over me. I arranged for the kids to stay with my sister for a weekend, saying I needed time to organize the house. In reality, I was preparing for the confrontation that would change everything. That Friday night, Mark came home late, his tie loosened, his eyes tired. I waited until he was in the kitchen, pouring a glass of water. I took a deep breath and set my phone on the counter, the photo of him and Elena at the wine bar open on the screen. "Who is she?" I asked, my voice steady despite the storm inside. He froze, his hand midair. "What are you talking about?" he said, but his eyes flicked to the phone and I saw the panic. I didn't let him dodge. I pulled out the letter, the printed receipts, everything. "Elena," I said. "Denver. The hotel. The jewelry. Tell me the truth, Mark." He tried to lie at first, said the photo was just a colleague, that the letter was old, from before we met. But I didn't back down. I laid out every piece of evidence, watching his excuses crumble. Finally, he slumped against the counter, his face pale. "It was a mistake," he said. "Elena, she was just someone I met at work. It didn't mean anything. My heart twisted, but I pressed. How long? He hesitated, then admitted it had been over a year. A year of lies, of secret trips, of building a life with her while I raised our kids, planned our future, believed in us. He swore it was over, that he'd ended it months ago, but I didn't believe him. Not anymore. I asked about the other charges, the ones that didn't match Elena's timeline. His silence was deafening. There was someone else, he finally said, his voice barely a whisper. Before Elena, a woman named Sarah from the office. I felt like I'd been punched. 2 women. 2 lives he'd hidden from me. He tried to explain, said he was overwhelmed, that he felt trapped by our routine. Trapped? I thought of the nights I'd stayed up with sick kids, the days I'd juggled work and school pickups, the years I'd poured into our family. And he felt trapped? I didn't cry. Not in front of him. I told him to leave, to stay at a hotel until I figured out what was next. He begged, said he'd do anything to fix it, but I couldn't look at him. I pointed to the door, and he left, his suitcase half-packed, his head down. The house felt eerily quiet without him, but for the first time, I didn't feel weak. I felt angry, alive, ready to protect what mattered most, my kids and myself. The next morning, I called Lisa, the attorney, and told her everything. She advised me to secure our finances, change passwords, and start thinking about custody. The word custody hit hard. I hadn't thought that far, but I knew I couldn't let Mark's lies hurt Sophie and Ethan. I spent the weekend organizing, locking joint accounts, moving money to a new account, saving every text and email he'd sent. I also reached out to my parents, who lived an hour away. They came over, their faces heavy with worry, but they didn't judge. My mom hugged me, and my dad promised to help with the kids. Having them there reminded me I wasn't alone. Telling Sophie and Ethan was the hardest part. I didn't want to break their world, but they deserved some version of the truth. When they came back from my sister's, I sat them down. Dad and I are having some grown-up problems, I said, keeping it simple. He's going to stay somewhere else for a while. Sophie's eyes filled with tears, and Ethan asked if Dad was mad at us. I hugged them both, promising it wasn't their fault, that we both loved them. I hated Mark for putting me in that position, for making me explain his mess. I started therapy, something I'd never considered before. My therapist, Dr. Patel, helped me process the anger, the grief, the guilt I felt for not seeing it sooner. She encouraged me to focus on what I could control, my choices, my kids, my future. I also threw myself into something new, gardening. It sounds small, but digging in the dirt, planting flowers with Sophie, watching Ethan water the seedlings, it grounded me. Our backyard became a project, a place where we could create something beautiful together. The kids loved it, and their laughter was a reminder of why I was fighting. Mark tried to contact me, sending texts about talking things out. I ignored them. Lisa warned me he might try to charm his way back, but I was done with his words. I met with her again, and we started drafting separation papers. It wasn't divorce, not yet, but a step toward protecting myself. She also suggested a private investigator to confirm whether Mark's affair with Elena was really over. I hesitated, but agreed. If he was still lying, I needed to know. A week later, the investigator sent me a report. Mark had been seen with Elena again at the same wine bar, just days after I'd kicked him out. The photos were undeniable, his hand on her back, her smile, the same intimacy I'd seen before. I wasn't surprised, but it still hurt. It also lit a fire in me. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for the truth, for the life my kids deserved. I started planning my next move, not out of anger, but out of strength. Mark's lies had broken my trust, but they wouldn't break me. I've been through a storm I never saw coming. For 12 years, I believed my husband, Mark, and I had a perfect family, our kids, Sophie and Ethan, our cozy Chicago home, a life filled with love. But a hidden letter from a woman named Elena shattered that illusion, revealing Mark's affair. I dug deeper, finding receipts, photos, and proof of not just one, but two women, Elena and Sarah, woven into his secret life. I confronted him, kicked him out, and thought I'd hit rock bottom. Then I learned he was still seeing Elena, even after his promises to change. I was done with his lies, but closing that chapter wasn't just about walking away. It was about rebuilding a life for me and my kids, stronger than before. After the private investigator's report confirmed Mark was still meeting Elena, I felt a strange mix of rage and relief. Rage because he'd lied again, and relief because it proved I'd made the right choice. I wasn't the naive wife anymore, clinging to a fantasy of who Mark was. I was Hannah, mother, survivor, ready to protect my family. I met with my attorney, Lisa, to move forward with the separation papers. She was calm, methodical, walking me through every step. "We'll make sure you and the kids are secure," she said. We froze joint accounts, secured my savings, and started discussing custody. The word still made my stomach churn. How do you explain to an 8-year-old girl and a 10-year-old boy that their dad's choices might change their lives forever? I focused on Sophie and Ethan, shielding them as much as I could. They knew Mark was staying somewhere else, but I kept the details vague, saying, "Dad and I need time to figure things out." Sophie would ask when he was coming home, her big eyes searching mine. Ethan was quieter, but I caught him staring at Mark's empty chair at dinner. I hated that they were hurting, but I poured everything into making them feel safe. We kept up our gardening project, turning our backyard into a little oasis. Sophie named every flower, while Ethan built a birdhouse with my dad. Those moments, watching them laugh, dirt smudged on their faces, reminded me what I was fighting for. Mark didn't make it easy. He kept texting, calling, leaving voicemails about fixing things. I ignored most of them, but one message stopped me cold. "Hannah, I know I messed up, but the kids need me. Don't do this to them." It was a low blow, twisting my love for Sophie and Ethan into his defense. I didn't respond, but it lit a fire in me. He didn't get to play the victim, not after years of lies. Lisa suggested a temporary custody agreement to limit his access until we could mediate. I agreed, but the thought of court battles and lawyers made me sick. I just wanted to move forward, not drag this out. Then came a new twist. One afternoon, I got a call from an unknown number. It was Sarah, the other woman Mark had admitted to seeing before Elena. Her voice was shaky, apologetic. "I didn't know he was married," she said. Not until it was too late. My first instinct was to hang up, but something made me listen. Sarah explained she'd worked with Mark 3 years ago. He'd told her he was separated, just like he'd told Elena. When she found out the truth, she ended it, but Mark had harassed her, sending messages, showing up at her apartment. She'd moved to another city to get away. "I heard about you from a mutual friend," she said. "I just wanted you to know you're not alone." Her words hit hard. I wasn't just angry at Mark anymore. I was furious at how he'd manipulated so many lives. Sarah sent me screenshots of his messages, proof of his persistence even after she'd cut contact. It was chilling, like seeing the real Mark for the first time, a man who thrived on control, not love. I shared everything with Lisa, who added it to our case. "This shows a pattern," she said. "It strengthens your position." I didn't want to fight, but I was ready to do whatever it took to protect my kids. I started building a new routine. Therapy with Dr. Patel was a lifeline, helping me untangle the guilt and anger. She encouraged me to find something just for me, not as a mom or a wife, but as Hannah. I'd always loved writing, so I started journaling, pouring out my thoughts late at night. Words became my refuge, raw, messy, honest. I wrote about the pain, the betrayal, but also the small victories, like Sophie's smile when we planted roses, or Ethan's pride when his birdhouse attracted a sparrow. One night, I shared a piece online, anonymously, on a forum for women who'd been through betrayal. The response was overwhelming. Strangers commented, sharing their own stories, thanking me for putting their feelings into words. It was the first time I felt seen, not as Mark's wife, but as me. My writing grew into a blog, something I hadn't planned. I called it Roots and Wings, inspired by our garden and my hope for the future. I wrote about healing, about raising kids through heartbreak, about finding strength in the ashes of a broken marriage. I didn't mention Mark or the details, but the emotions were real. Readers connected, and soon I had a small but growing following. A local women's group even asked me to speak at their event. I was terrified, but I said yes. Standing in front of 20 women, sharing my story, I felt a power I hadn't known I had. They clapped, some cried, and one woman hugged me, whispering, "You're giving me hope." That moment changed me. I wasn't just surviving, I was helping others do the same. Mark tried one last time to pull me back. He showed up at the house unannounced, holding a bouquet of flowers, looking like the man I'd fallen in love with. "I've changed," he said. "I ended things with Elena. I'm in therapy." I listened, but I didn't feel the pull I used to. His words were empty, rehearsed. I thought of Sarah's story, Elena's letter, the years of lies. "You don't get to decide my future anymore," I told him. "Leave." He didn't argue this time. He left the flowers on the porch and walked away. I threw them in the compost, feeling lighter than I had in months. The legal process moved forward. Lisa negotiated a custody agreement that prioritized the kids' stability. Mark got supervised visits for now, pending his commitment to therapy and accountability. I didn't want to keep him from Sophie and Ethan, but I needed them safe. They started seeing a child therapist, someone who helped them process their feelings. Ethan opened up about missing his dad, while Sophie drew pictures of our family, sometimes including Mark, sometimes not. It broke my heart, but I knew they'd be okay. We were building something new together. My blog kept growing, and I started a small online shop, selling prints of my garden sketches. It wasn't much, but it was mine, a step toward financial independence. I also planned a trip for the kids and me, a summer road trip to the Grand Canyon. We'd never done anything like it, and the idea of exploring, just the three of us, felt like freedom. I could see it, Sophie sketching the cliffs, Ethan spotting hawks, me riding under the stars. It was a future I could believe in. I'm not fully healed. Some days, I still feel the sting of Mark's betrayal, the weight of what he took from us. But I'm not defined by it anymore. I'm Hannah, mom, writer, gardener, survivor. I've learned that family isn't just the one you're given, it's the one you build, with love, truth, and resilience. Sophie and Ethan are my heart, and together, we're growing roots and wings. This isn't the end of my story, it's the beginning of a new one.